straight men sleep with trans girls, part 14. So, to sum it all up of all the episodes, basically we are the supreme. We are the dolls. We're exaggerated femininity, which the chasers like.
No. Being a woman is not, oh, Soleil.
Maybe, like, don't compare your womanhood to my womanhood, because we already established that, like, trans women's womanhood is different than a cisgender woman's womanhood. You're the real woman. You're the biological woman. Nothing should be able to threaten that. You were raised in this life. You have a menstrual cycle. You can carry children. Like, what's the issue, babe? Are we getting too real for you? What is it, huh?
So I've been thinking about trans athletes a little bit lately, and as a trans person, I would like to have a discussion about it. So, first things first, this conversation is incredibly disingenuous and misinformed and has nothing to do with biological reality or biological advantages. And TERFs, biological essentialists, and transphobes tend to conveniently overlook the fact that sports in general were created in order to prove that you have a biological and dedication and training-based advantage over all of your competitors. To prove that this conversation has nothing to do with biological advantages making sports unfair and therefore less fun, and everything to do with controlling the bodies, identities, and self-expression of other human beings by colonialist and Eurocentric and heteronormative ideals, look no further than Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps has a biological advantage over his competitors in swimming, yet he is continuously allowed to compete despite this biological advantage that TERFs, biological essentialists, and transphobes regularly complain about being something that ruins sports for people. If you want more proof of this, look into the history of professional level athletics, wherein people of color and cis women were segregated or even entirely barred from competing in professional level athletics against cishet white men, not due to any biological advantage or disadvantage, but solely because cishet white men felt threatened. In regards to the segregation of people of color in professional level athletics, bunk science was created based off of racial stereotypes claiming that black people in specific sports like running had a biological advantage, not because of height or anything, but because of their blackness. That somehow their entire existence as a black person gave them an advantage in running. And they would use excuses like, oh, well, black people in the Congo had to outrun lions, which is a racist stereotype and a racist belief that was seen as a biological fact. We now know today that it's not a biological fact, but people back then genuinely believed that that was a biological, factual advantage that black people, particularly black men, had over white men. And in regards to cis women, women were initially allowed to compete in sports, though at a very limited capacity. And when they started beating men at their own game in particular sports such as archery and endurance, men got butthurt. And to protect their fragile male egos, they created more bunk science that claimed that women were physically and biologically inferior to men. They didn't have to really do much, considering the fact that for centuries, women have always been considered physically and biologically inferior to men, solely because they're women, and because we live in a very patriarchal, misogynistic society and have always lived in a very patriarchal and misogynistic society. Furthermore, you need to look at science in general in regards to trans athletes, because when you look at the science And when you look at the data, we're not winning. It is so rare for us to win anything in sports. Because when you look at the science, the hormones that we take make us weaker. They make us physically weaker. We lose muscle mass. And unless we keep up on our athletics and keep working out, we lose muscle. The entire conversation boils down to the perpetuation of the societal perception that women are weak and stupid and incapable of doing anything without men present. That is the entire crux of this conversation. It has nothing to do with protecting women. It has nothing to do with making women's sports more fair. It has everything to do with continuing the societal misunderstanding that women are just inherently less than men. That is the entire point of this conversation. It is to perpetuate the idea that women just cannot function without male power or dominance, because otherwise they're too weak to take care of themselves and thusly would falter and struggle. Again, I'm speaking as a trans person, and though I am, based on that, affected by this conversation, I don't do sports. I've never been good at sports. Because despite the fact that people perceive me to have a biological advantage over people in things like basketball or volleyball simply because I'm tall, I lack hand-eye coordination, which completely cancels out any advantage my height would give me. I cannot throw a ball through a net, and I cannot hit a ball over a net. I cannot do that. I'm just not good at it. Also, I have exercise intolerance because of my POTS, and overexerting myself really takes a number on my body. It fucks me up pretty goddamn good if I overexert myself. And sports require a lot of exertion because you have to run about a court, typically, and chase a ball, and then exert more energy hitting, throwing, or moving that ball in a, what they would say is a legal way, which I also struggle with. I tried doing basketball in 4th grade. I know what I'm talking about. I do not, I constantly traveled because I cannot run and dribble a ball at the same time, which is another aspect to this entire conversation. Just because somebody might have a perceived biological advantage does not mean that they actually have that advantage, because you could have a disadvantage that completely cancels that out. My height as an advantage is canceled out by my lack of hand-eye coordination and general clumsiness. I do not have the ability to function in that kind of game or environment, not just because of my disability, but because I do not have certain qualities that would allow me to succeed in that game. Anyway, I'm exhausted. I'm gonna go back to bed because I don't sleep well. Have a good night. I don't give a fuck.
And the girls, they're mad.
Yeah, we are mad for a valid reason, because you are spreading misinformation and oversimplifying a complex topic. You are... If you used your brain for anything other than keeping your ears apart, I would absolutely use this time to re-educate you and to help you understand how periods are more complicated than just the uterus shedding its uterine lining. But we don't live in that world. Instead, we live in a world where you use your brain as internal decoration. I genuinely don't understand why there has been such a massive uptick in young white trans women coming online and showing their entire ass, espousing the conservative values of a cis white male as if it will have any sort of benefit for you socially. If you wanted so desperately to remain in a conservative cis white male bubble, why did you transition? Because transitioning directly opposes the ability to stay in that bubble. And those values you espouse directly oppose your ability to live safely and peacefully in society.
as well as denies you the benefits that you once reaped from those values. Honestly, what would be even more concerning to me is if you actually don't believe half the things that you're saying, but you're saying them just because you think you can make money off of them through conservatives. Because there have been many trans people who have tried that grift, and many trans people who have failed. The only reason Blair White and Calvin Guerra and people like them are capable of making money off of it is because they found their niche before that niche became something people were aware of. You might think that doing this will also protect you in the future, but it won't. Just because the rest of us are being eaten by lions, and you are telling the lions who to eat, does not mean the lions will not eat you when given the chance. You might be pushing the rest of us under the bus, and you might live a little bit longer, but the lions are still going to eat you. You're still meat. You're still on the menu. You're just going to be like the last portion of the course. You could be as conservative as they come. You could be a gun-toting, Confederate flag-flying redneck from the deep South. But because you're trans, they don't care about you. You are still trans. And to them, that is a mortal sin. So when they say things like, eradicate transgenderism, they're talking about all of us. Whether you like it or not, you are part of that all. So I guess this is a message to all you young, white trans femmes out there. Selling your soul is not worth it. You might live for 5 minutes longer, but they're still going to eat you. You're still going to die. And selling out the rest of us only speeds up that process.